Scafflogic introduces you to a world of logic. Hello and welcome to this training video. In this video, I would like to demonstrate how to modify already existing buildings. On our desktop, we have 3 buildings already created from a previous video, and we have the option to go in and change our measurements if we want to. I currently have 3 building types displayed, and I would like to modify just one of them. We will right-click on the Contents menu, and we have something called the Wall Operator, where we can go in and modify the wall. As soon as I begin to modify the wall, you will see that when I touch one of the walls, it changes color. I can then left-click on it and drag it into the desired position. We can also change the shape of the wall by using the Control key and left-clicking. The blue lines tell us that we have reached the desired angle. Once released, we will have the perfect arc. You can right-click or hit Escape to get out of this modifying function. Let's say, just for fun, that we need to make a small balcony here. I can go to the Wall Operator again, where we can split and merge our building. We can do this by simply cutting into the existing wall. I am using the Z key to tell the system that the cut will start at 200 centimeters from the edge. Once I get the control line, I can drag it to the other side, which will also be set to 200 centimeters from the end of the wall. Now you can see that I have 2 guidelines, and what I am doing is placing the mouse pointer on the wall until I get a red line, and then I can make the first cut by clicking, and then the second cut. Now that I have placed my cuts, I will right-click to get out of the mode and continue to modify the walls until I get my building to the desired shape. We could hit the Control key and make this wall rounded, but in this case, I just want to extend the wall. I will use the Set key to let the system know I would like to extend the wall exactly 210 centimeters, and the system will help me reach the exact measurement.